Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are live on this beautiful Wednesday. Hi. Hey to everybody watching. We have a special live stream today, which I'm super excited to jump into in a second. But if you're just joining us, if this is your first live stream, the International OCD Foundation provides live streams throughout the week. I just saw the email, so shout out to the foundation for sending out the email. But there's an email that goes out, so if you sign up to get emails from the IOCF, it had a list of all this month's September live streams. But on Wednesdays, every Wednesday at 12 Eastern, we have an Ask the Experts live stream. And these live streams are really aimed to get on experts, clinicians, people that are specializing in certain aspects of OCD and related disorders treatments, psychiatrists, medication providers. So we're just trying to provide you with education and resources, community information. And I know I always think about the live streams because when I was struggling with OCD, the pandemic hadn't hit yet, so we didn't really have all this cool technology. And I remember, I'd go to the conference every year, but then for the other 11 months and, for 3 weeks, it felt very lost or very just kind of isolated on my own. So these live streams provide community, and we're so happy for the people that either watch, join live. Shout out to all of you, as well as the people that end up watching it back. We get a lot of rewatches. So continue to share those streams, the links, or head over to our YouTube at IOCF. If you just go to youtube.com/IOCF, and if you click under live, you'll see all the different live streams. The only thing this live stream can't provide is we can't be a crisis resource. So if you're really struggling, we recommend finding a clinician at iocf.org/find-help, or go to your local emergency room. You can dial 911 or 988, or go to 988lifeline.org. So please get that care and support that you need. We can't provide those kind of resources on these live streams, but we can definitely give you community. So if you're watching, we're on X, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, and we're on iocf.org/live. So whatever platform you're watching on, go ahead and join the comments, join the community, and you can ask questions throughout the live stream and we'll get to them. But I'm super excited about today's live stream. So I was at this place once and I remember being there. Well, not them, but the place that we're going to be talking about today. One of the most difficult things is I hear a lot of people are so inspired after getting better and they want to do something to help, and people go on to do peer support or advocacy, but some people go full circle and become a licensed clinician to be able to treat and provide kind of a 180 experience and support people with OCD. So we're going to be jumping into early career development. What is it like to be somebody who is inspired to work in this community, who wants to help out and be a part of it? It doesn't mean you had to have OCD, but there's something along the way. I usually hear stories of people impacted by an OCD or related disorder, or they recognize that there's a need to support and then decide to turn around and go on and help the community. So before we jump in, I have an esteemed panel of guests. I haven't had this many panelists in a while, so I'm excited to jump in. So I'm going to introduce everybody, and then we're going to jump into the topic. So on your screen, you see Dr. Stephanie Grimaldi. Okay, we met, and I practiced there. We're going to get this crap right, because we practiced, and I made sure to go everybody's name. It's Dr. Stephanie Grimaldi, is a licensed clinical psychologist in private practice and clinical research at the Center for OCD and Related Disorders at Columbia University. She specializes in CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for OCD, anxiety, and PTSD. Welcome, Dr. Grimaldi.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Good. All right. Also on your screen, you have Brianna Myers, is a therapist at InStride Health with a master's in social work from New York University. Brianna specializes in the treatment of anxiety and OCD and holds an additional specialization in trauma, having previously worked with children and adolescents presenting with symptoms of PTSD and adults and families struggling to cope after surviving domestic violence. Brianna comes to this work because of her love for serving young people and a desire to break down barriers to quality mental health within young adults. You can catch her teaching both hip hop and mental health in dance seminars at Embodied Dance Conference. How you doing?
Doing well. Excited to be here. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, and it's Brianna, right? We got this right. We practiced. I promise. You're going to say, no, this doesn't make sense. But I actually grew up in Long Beach. I know how to dance. And when I worked for a gym, The hip hop instructor was out for a month and they had me substitute. I probably did not kill it like you did, but if you ever need somebody to jump in and make you look better, just let me know.
I love that. I'm going to have you on speed dial.
Got it. All right. So Amanda Bellinger is a fourth-year graduate student at the University of Miami. She earned her BS in psychology and French language and literature from Fordham University in 2019. Her research interests involve examining mechanisms and maintenance for hoarding disorder with the goal of improving treatment outcomes. Specifically, Amanda is interested in understanding how hoarding-related cognitions change over the course of treatment. Hi, Amanda. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm so happy to be here with everyone.
Yes, it's good to have all you. Thank you. Alnardo Martinez, LMHC, is the interim director of the Pediatric OCD Intensive Service and licensed mental health counselor in the Anxiety Disorders Center at the Child Mind Institute. With a warm and compassionate approach, Mr. Martinez is dedicated to helping children, teens, and young adults overcome anxiety-related challenges and build meaningful, fulfilling lives. He has the extensive experience treating OCD, social anxiety, selective mutism, generalized anxiety disorder, specific phobias, and pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome known as PANDAS or PANS. As a level 3 radically open dialectical behavioral therapy or RODBT practitioner and a graduate of the International OCD Foundation's Behavioral Therapy Training Institute, BTTI, which reminds me there is an advanced forum for pediatrics in Long Beach, in my hometown. I cannot wait. I'm presenting with a family, so come out to Long Beach. He brings advanced skills to his work with clients, offering specialized care for those with treatment-resistant symptoms. Fluent in both English and Spanish, Mr. Martinez is committed to making high-quality mental health care accessible to diverse communities. His goal is to equip young people with the tools they need to thrive, whether at home, school, or out in the world. Well, hi, panel. How we doing?
Doing good. That was a lot longer. I thought I shortened it, but thanks.
It is all good. I know it's always like, how much do you give? You don't want to just be like, hi, my name is Chris. But then on paper, it doesn't look long and then it ends up getting on, but it's all good. So, well, welcome, y'all. It is good to see you. So I'm really excited about this topic. And I just kind of want to jump in first and foremost. One thing I'm always curious about is what brought all of you into the field, because I think people watch this. What I'm excited about this live stream is a lot of different people that watch this are actually people interested in getting in the field, or they just started. A lot of people just started applying. I remember, I think I told y'all, I was at my aunt's retirement party and one of her friend's daughters was in school to be an LMFT, and I cornered her and she probably wanted to pepper spray me, but I asked her like 800 questions, and I think some of her answers kind of got me lined up and made me feel much more comfortable, which I'm excited to talk about today. But just real quick, I'd love to go around and just what got you interested in the OCD and related fields. We need way more practitioners. We have a need that is so desperate. So I like to hear. So I'll go in the order that I introduced everybody. So Stephanie, why don't you start?
Sure. So prior to starting graduate school, and I was actually looking for research assistant positions, and I hadn't had any experience with OCD related disorders or anxiety disorders at all. And I applied for an RA position that ended up being all focused on OCD and related disorders. And for me, I just felt so just connected to the work and to the population, and also just like how highly misunderstood it was and how much stigma around it was. And it was like, okay, I need to get out there. I need to be able to do this kind of work, improve access to care, improve treatments. And that's really what started it for me, was this research assistant opportunity and position. And from then on, I just continued on this path.
That's amazing. Thanks, Stephanie. I think you were next, Brianna. How about for you?
Yeah, I think my journey to therapy was windy. I went into undergrad not thinking that I was going to do anything even close to this. And it wasn't until my senior year that a professor of mine was like, I really think that you would make a great therapist. What are you going to do after you graduate? And I was like, I never really thought about it, but like, let's do a little bit of research and see how it goes. And thankfully, I loved it. It's a lot of investment, both time and money. And I really fell in love with it, which is awesome. But in terms of OCD work, it was actually Alnardo. that got me interested in it. We were colleagues at the Child Mind Institute, and I always used to hear about his experiences and other folks who worked with folks who have OCD, their experiences. And I'm like, oh, this sounds so interesting. It's intriguing. I really like doing creative stuff. And it seemed like they had an opportunity to be super creative with their work. And when I got this opportunity at InStride, it was a perfect opportunity to sort of dive more into the field. So it's been an awesome learning opportunity for me.
I always love hearing stories like that where one of my mentors, Dr. Barbara Vanapin, who works at USC, it was the same kind of thing. Like she kind of is like constantly pulling people in. So I always like to hear stories like that because I'm like, yes, convert them. How about you, Amanda?
I actually knew pretty early on that I was really interested in a career in mental health. I think I was a sophomore in high school when I took my first psychology class, and I was hooked. And I had the opportunity to specialize a little bit more in OCD starting in undergrad. And it was something I knew I was really passionate about because I have several loved ones with OCD, and I kind of saw what they were going through and wanted to contribute to work that could help improve their lives. And so, yeah, starting in undergrad, I was able to work a little bit more with OCD. So I kind of locked in on it early.
No, that was me. I mean, I went to grad school, like obviously because I have OCD, I like came into grad school and was like locked in. I was like, that's all I want to hear about. I don't want to hear about any of these other conditions, just OCD related. I mean, it ended up being amazing. So glad I went to graduate school, and you learn so much in addition to just the modalities and the disorders you want to treat. But that's great that you kind of already knew what you wanted to do. How about for you, Alnardo? Same question.
Yeah, well, first I'm honored, Brianna. I didn't know that was your journey, so it's great to be a part of it. I worked in child welfare for a while, saw a need for more just therapists in general, so I thought I would just do more general therapy work. But then found myself self-selecting a project on OCD, and got really interested to the point where then I researched like jobs in the area around OCD and found an intake coordinator position at Rogers in Tampa back in the day, and so I found myself there, and from then it just kind of spiraled on and cycled to where I am now.
Awesome. Well, we need more of y'all. So hopefully this inspires people. Like I said at the conferences, people have come up to me and just said like, "Hey, watch your streams. Like I'm a new clinician starting in graduate school. Wasn't sure if I wanted to do OCD." Or people say, they're thinking about getting into the field. So it's good to hear have this live stream today, obviously to give people information, but it's cool to hear everybody's journey. I always like to find out because I think when people hear your journeys, it's like, oh, okay, I can do this too. Let's say somebody is on the fence and they're kind of thinking about, okay, do I want to go? Am I ready to apply to graduate? Well, actually, let me take a step back. If somebody wants to work in this field, what are some of their first steps? Like, what do people have to do? I know some of the qualifications are a little bit different per state, but in general, if somebody's watching this and they're interested, either they're about to enter undergrad or they're in undergrad and they want to work in this field, what are some of the basics that they need to do to eventually get to a point that they can treat OCD and related disorders? And anybody could take that. Or I can call on people like, let's go.
I mean, I think one of the first steps I did was just talk to people in the field before even deciding, is that something I want to do? And I think even now I find that happening. People will just randomly reach out to me on LinkedIn and ask questions about like how I got where I was and why I chose the field and what I do. So I think just being open and reaching out to people who do the work you're interested in and asking questions to see, is this something I think would actually be a good fit?
Yeah. Yeah. What should be like some of the majors that people look at, whether it's an undergrad, or what are some of the programs people should look into?
Well, I think in the undergraduate level, like being a psychology major, potentially even like a philosophy major or neuroscience, or anything with like anything with like mental health or helping professions. I know like in my experience, I was a psychology major, and early on I wasn't sure exactly like how do you become a therapist, or how do you do research? And I remember kind of figuring it out. We had TAs in our classes, like teacher assistants, and I was chatting with some of them once, and I was like, so what do you guys do? And they're like, we're in grad school. And I'm like, what's grad school? Like, what do you mean? And they were talking about being in a PhD program, and that really, like, personally for me, opened up to the idea of not only being a clinician but doing research as well, so that connecting with others, like in a college campus setting, especially like other students or graduate students or professors as well.
Yeah, I ended up getting an undergrad in both psychology and human development. I think for me, the psychology was obvious, but I ended up getting a second major in human development because I just felt fascinated in like the different developmental stages, especially how anxiety and OCD and other things really kind of hijack that like traditional, people hitting certain traditional markers, different stages that their peers hit, and how OCD and anxiety really kind of takes people off that traditional path. Obviously, with graduate school, there's choices. I know when I was looking at graduate school, I'm like, okay, there's LMFT, there's LPCC, there's LMH. I know in other states I don't think we have LMHCs in California, but there's those. There's substance use disorder counseling in some states. There's psychology. How can somebody, like, how did you all decide which path to go, and what are some of those things that you took into factor for your own career? I'd love to hear from each person.
I can maybe start with this one because I feel like I was one of the ones, at least among this group, who didn't really know that I was going to end up here. So I feel like for me in undergrad, I won't tell the whole long story, but I ended up having a double major in psychology and sociology, and I really fell in love with it. And when I was trying to search for graduate programs after that professor sort of put that little bug in my ear about being a therapist, one of the things that appealed to me about going into an MSW program was it was pretty wide open in terms of things that you could do after school. Because I was like, I think that I would like therapy from what I'm sort of researching. And I did exactly what Leonardo did. I sort of like bugged some people to be like, tell me about your job and what this looks like. So I thought that I would be pretty happy, but I wasn't 100% sure. And so I felt like going into an MSW program offered me a lot of opportunities after graduate school if therapy wasn't the pathway for me. So that was something huge that I took into consideration for sure. And then another thing that also appealed to me about an MSW program is, at least at NYU where I went to school, so many people were second career folks. So they came in with lots of varied experiences. And because I kind of moved into mental health a little bit late in my undergraduate career, I felt like an MSW program really appreciated like having a different sort of lens and way of viewing things. So that felt like a good match for me.
What's that, Brianna? Amanda, how about for you? Like, how did you make the decision? I know you're in graduate school right now. And you're muted, by the way. It's at the bottom. Just hit unmute. I'll go to Stephanie and then come back to you. That way, maybe Emilio could help. How about for you, Stephanie?
So for me, I always knew I was interested in like mental health and potentially doing more of just being a clinician and a therapist. But then in undergrad, speaking with like a TA from the PhD program, it really started to open up this world of research for me. So that's how, for me, I started kind of taking that path more towards, should I get a PhD? Should I get a PsyD? And prior to even applying to that, I took some time to work in between, like work in a research lab, try to get some publications, learn a little bit more about like what the research piece of it would be like prior to applying to a PhD program. And then specifically with picking the program that I went to Hofstra on Long Island, it really allowed for that, being able to pursue the research piece, but also the clinical piece as well. And I felt like, okay, this was the perfect fit of being able to do both of those things with my career.
Amazing. I know I tell people that a lot too, is, are you wanting to go into research? Are you wanting to go into more, actual treatment? Like that can act, kind of help if a PhD or a master's makes a little bit more sense.
And you could do clinical research, right? So that's what I do now, which is really cool to be able to combine those two pieces.
Absolutely. How for you, Amanda?
Hopefully you guys can hear me now.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Don't know what that happened. That
No, it's
was.
all
But
good.
yeah, I think what was the big deciding thing for me was thinking about I knew I wanted a career in mental health. I knew that it would involve therapy in some capacity, but I also really liked research. And so for me, it was really just thinking about like, what are my core values? What are the things that I really want to get out of my career? And what kinds of programs are going to set me up to get that. And it just so happened that a clinical psych PhD was the best fit for kind of my goals and values.
Yeah. And lastly, for you, Leonardo, how did you make the decision?
Yeah, I think I guess even in the scheme of things, I was kind of also like an older student in my probably at that point later early 30s when I went to grad school. So I did a master's program. And given that was I was already working full time, married, and so there really wasn't this ability where in a lot of PhD or doctoral programs I looked into required like a full time commitment and a lot of other things, and so that just didn't fit into my schedule. And so then I looked into more of the master's programs. I did my schooling in the evening and worked full time in the day, and then kind of had to do some of that puzzling around internship and kind of getting those clinical hours. But for me, it ended up being just kind of where I was in that stage of my life and what actually fit there, rather than potentially when I was younger, it might have looked a little different. But still very happy with where I am now.
Awesome. Well, I think I mean you and Brianna said the same thing about like in Brianna's school there was like a lot more later like kind of second career, and then you were saying you felt you went a little bit later. I think it's just a good reminder that there isn't like an age cap. I know in my program it wasn't a bunch of 22-year-olds who freshly graduated from college. In fact, like a lot of the programs I applied to, I was fortunate I had so much experience with the IOCF already, and they took that into account. And a lot of people that got turned away, it wasn't that they were bad, it was just they were fresh out of undergrad, didn't have any experience, and there was a lot of people that had 5-10 years experience somewhat in the field. And so I always tell people, people say, oh, I feel like it's too late, I'm 27. I was like, oh, you're gonna be a baby in the program. Like, it's totally okay. I do want to throw out a comment real quick from Donna at 1218 your time, Emilio. But her daughter, Caitlin, received the Youth Hero Award in Chicago at our conference. I remember seeing your daughter's speech and it made me cry. I was just talking about your daughter's speech yesterday with one of the IOCF staff members. We were talking about the youth advocacy and hero awards. And I was like, oh my God, the two speeches this year made me cry. But she received the Youth Hero Award. She's beginning her senior year of high school. She's planning on majoring in psychology and or neuroscience in college because of her journey with OCD. Thank you for all you do. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I always like to hear, from people is just like, because of their own journeys. And like I said, it may not be, in this case, it's because of Caitlin's experience. But I remember one of the therapists I used to work with, she was a great therapist. She was in her grad program, and like one of the one of her fellow cohorts had OCD, and she was always like struggling to get to class on time and get to her car. And she witnessed it, kind of befriended her, and was like, what do you mean there's barely any treatment providers, and decided to change her course. But thank you, Donna, for sharing. It's amazing. And congrats to Caitlin. And her speech made me cry. Okay, so let's say when you're ready to apply, I know we were kind of talking about some factors, including like financial and personal readiness, what goes into applying, time commitment. Like, let's say somebody was to come up to you, or they're watching this stream right now and they're like, hey, I think I'm ready to apply. What are those factors that people should take into consideration before, starting the application process?
Well, I think depending on what kind of program you want to apply for, a big piece of it is like researching kind of what's out there and what program feels like kind of aligns with your values, and also the different coursework. There's also like theoretical orientation. There's like more practical things to consider when applying. And if someone is interested in taking more of a research route, like looking at what research are professors doing at the school, does it align with the work that they want to be doing? Because depending on applications, you might have to structure things to be super aligned with the programs that you are applying to, especially if it's a like a PhD or a PsyD program. So lots of like information gathering and looking things up like beforehand before even starting the process.
Yeah. Well, for the rest of the panel, any advice that you wish either you received, or what went into you kind of planning, like getting into school, the application process? I know for me, I was very fortunate. I didn't have a lot of stress around my not reference. What are the letter? God, it was so many years ago. The letters of recommendation.
Recommendation.
Thank you. I was very fortunate to have 4 people that really wanted to jump in, but I know other people have said like that's kind of nerve-wracking to ask, or things like that. So what are some kind of things that you would give advice to yourself, or you talk to people now who are thinking about applying or getting ready to apply or starting that process?
I think one of the things that came up for me was I felt a lot of apprehension about taking the time that I needed between undergrad and applying for my PhD program, because I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my momentum if I'm in school and I take time off to work. Like, am I going to have a hard time going back to school? And I had planned, I was like, I'm going to take one gap year. And I ended up actually taking 3. And so I think really being honest with yourself about like where you're at with your experience, and if it's something that you really truly are ready for, um, and really not being leaning into the discomfort that comes up when you change plans and take gap year, and really focusing on like, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Grad school will be there. If I need to take the time, I'm going to take the time.
Yeah. And I think too, it's I always tell people it's the pacing. You can make your own pacing. I was like, I want to get in and I want to go hard, and I did, because I was so ready to treat. But I think some people, I had people that started in my cohort who took a extra year or two because they had families or they already had jobs and things like that. So I always remind people it's totally not, you have to finish by a certain time. I'd love to take this question. It comes from LinkedIn from Becky. She says, "Hi, I'm one of those who is making a career change from many years in tech. I'm now in graduate school, MFT. Ooh, woo, woo. I also am getting an LPCC. So if somebody puts that, I can do the woo woo for that too. But woo woo for the MFT. I'd love to hear any advice for getting an internship or a practicum site that will allow me to work with people with OCD. I'm in Northern California." So I'll start, and then if you all want to jump in, just because I'm in California. So Becky, great question. So when I did my practicum site in California, and I think it's the same for Northern California, your practicum site has to be like a community center mental health. It can't be like a private practice. So for me, an example is UCLA was nearby, and they had an OCD program, and they offered, that was a place that I could get an internship or a practicum in grad program. The only reason I didn't take it is because if you're familiar with Southern California, I'm in Orange County, and to get to UCLA every day, by the time they needed me, it was like 8 a.m. I would have had to leave at like 6 a.m. and I would have fallen asleep on the people. But what I did is when the practicum fair, it was all the different treatment centers in the area. I just was like straight up, kind of like you were saying, Amanda. I was just like, I want to treat OCD and related disorders, including anxiety and depression. I don't want to see anything else. Will you see me? Now, I will say you do end up having to see like some general people, which I enjoy, just to further remind me I don't want to treat that. But one of the centers was like, hey, we really want to sharpen our OCD, our anxiety, our depression, our body dysmorphic disorder. And we'll really start to advertise for that population. We'll make sure you work with those clients. And I kind of help build that. But in Northern California, I would look into, I think Rogers people could do it, or any of the universities that have OCD programs. What I would start also, Becky, is like telling the different practicum professors or your counselor, like, hey, I really want to get a practicum site that focuses on OCD. And then that way they could start looking at some of the places in the area that meet the qualifications for your program and already have you start talking to them ahead of time. But I would suggest it because working with the population you love, I know a lot of people, unfortunately, kind of didn't try that and worked a practicum site with people they didn't really want and kind of fell out of love with it. But I think that, I don't know if any of you have any additional kind of pointers or tips.
I know in my experience, so with the PhD program, each year we would have to do like what we call like externships, which is similar to a practicum. And then at the end, we would do a year-long internship. So looking at like previous students, where did they go for these practicum sites, connecting with them, asking them like what kinds of patients did you see, what populations did you work with? That could be one way to find out like what places that are already affiliated with your school, because sometimes there's like a contractual agreement as well, like certain places take students from certain schools, so that could be a place like talking to previous students. If there's some kind of practicum or externship director at your school, like asking them if they have sites in mind. And then also taking into kind of similar, Chris, to what you shared, could there be a place that maybe that's not their primary focus, but are they open to expanding that a bit? Or if they get individuals with this population that you're interested in, then saying like, okay, well, would I be able to work with them? This is something I'm really interested in. So I think kind of a combination of those factors is what I did in my experience.
And I think when it comes to internship sites, and especially if you're wanting to treat OCD or something specific, is in your interview with them, making sure they're using evidence-based practices and making sure that's going to be something where you're actually getting training. They're not just going to kind of throw you in there and figure it out on your own, as unfortunately some sites can be. So making sure you're interviewing them back and asking those questions about how do they treat OCD, what does it look like, and what level of supervision on OCD would you actually be getting?
Well said. Yeah, I would start earlier. I mean, that's what I did, Donna. Or sorry, it wasn't Donna, it was Becky. That's what I did because, like I said, the only sites were in San Diego and LA, and I just was too far for me. So I had to kind of go to Plan B, and Plan B for me was like a center that was like, yes, we will find you those clients. We want to help you provide those services. One of the bullet points I knew that we talked about is kind of resources through the IOCDF to continue education. But Amy asked a good question, and we'll combine it. At 1228, she says, my understanding is that clinicians need to seek training, specific training to treat OCD effectively outside of graduate school. Is that going to change anytime soon? So I think what she's referring to is, I know a lot of us think that we're going to go to our undergrad and graduate programs and they're going to have a 6-month long OCD training, and you find out real quickly that doesn't happen, and have to get additional care. So can we kind of speak to that? Also, about how did you get that additional training? Any resources through IOCDF? I know we talked about the BTTI. And then I could kind of wrap it up, Amy, about what the IOCDF is looking to do to change it, and maybe if anybody's heard any rumblings of any change. Anyone could kind of take that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that grad school programs are changing anytime soon in terms of them focusing on OCD. I think it'd be tough. I think everyone wants each school to focus on their kind of passion. So I think that would be difficult. In terms of getting more specialized training, similar to in your practicum sites, trying to find places that treat OCD, even early on, like before I even went into grad school, I worked at a place where they specialized in treating OCD, and that helped me, get more understanding, get some training, looking for mentors. So even after grad school, had a really great mentor for many, many years, who treated OCD. And then doing the BTTI, the Behavioral Therapy Training Institute through IOCDF, even though I had already been kind of in the OCD field for 5+ years because I was on the wait list forever, and had to wait till I was independently licensed to get on the wait list. I still got a lot out of it, and I would still recommend people who have been treating OCD for a long time, even if you feel like an expert, whatever that means, still recommend doing like ongoing trainings and getting more.
Yeah. How did some of you receive, like, where did you receive your training in the OCD and related disorders?
So for me, it was through my first externship site, which is where I am now. So at the Center for OCD and Related Disorders at Columbia. So in my third year of grad school, that's when we're able to do, so we had an in-house clinics that we were able to see patients in. And although I was learning to do exposure therapy, it wasn't all OCD patients. It was lots of different like anxiety related disorders, trauma, but I knew I wanted to go back to treating OCD. So I intentionally sought out a practicum site that was OCD specific. And that's where I got the training. And then throughout the rest of graduate school, I wanted to work with like other populations, kind of to confirm like, okay, I know I definitely want to work with individuals with OCD, but also to gain some other skills that are useful. Like I worked with high risk young adults for a year, and that was really helpful for like assessment of risk and safety planning and all of those essential skills in being a clinician. And then I knew afterwards, like through internship and then like postdoc fellowship, I went back to the Center for OCD and Related Disorders, and I was like, okay, this is where I am, this is where I'm staying, to kind of continue that training.
Yeah. How for you, Amanda? I know you're in it right now, but what are some of the things that you've done to kind of just either at a practicum site or outside of it on your own? Like Alnardo was saying, that unfortunately BTTI is for licensed clinicians, but what are some of the training that you're doing for OCD?
Yeah, so both of my, or all three so far of my practicum sites have not been OCD focused, but I've been fortunate enough that my research mentor is like specializes in OCD and related disorders, and so I've actually been supervised by her and taken on. We did a treatment study on OCD where I got to see clients. And I also had an individual, I'm really interested in hoarding disorder. And so I was able to see an individual client and be supervised by her as well. So my kind of clinical training with OCD and related disorders has been through my research lab.
Yeah. How for you?
Yeah, for me, I feel like in my MSW program, we didn't learn very much about OCD at all. And I think getting into it these past couple of years, it's been nice to see that despite not touching on it formally, the experiences that you've had really kind of like set you up for success in the long run. So similar to what Stephanie was sharing, just in like learning those concrete skills of how to be a clinician, how to assess, all of those things are really valuable. And even doing trauma work previously, you do have that exposure element that I think that experience lends very nicely to work with clients that have OCD. And again, just like thinking about like CBT as a foundation, like learning some general ERP principles. So I would say that even if you're not able to get a practicum site or, your particular program doesn't focus on OCD that much, you're still gaining a lot of knowledge that's really going to set you up for success once you do enter into the field.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and probably why, and I would guess that you would all agree, but one of the reasons I think a lot of us are so pushing to work with a clinician, whether that person is an associate supervised and receiving hours, or a licensed clinician, because there'll be people, coaches online and things that haven't gone through school. And I think one of the things that if you're really looking to work with someone to get treatment, right? I know that there's a lot of really good resources out there, and people are in their lane and really kind of doing what they're trained to do and kind of in their scope. But what I liked about grad school is it kind of teaches you how to be a therapist, how to be empathetic, how to support, how to, affirm, to listen, what to do in a crisis situation, what to do in a panic situation, what resources there are. And so I think, even though I would have loved that my program specialized in OCD and there's none in the country, unfortunately, I think all of the other kind of nuts and bolts were so helpful. And I remember the first time I was in a crisis situation, it didn't scare me, because I was like, oh, we learned this in school, and I kind of like jumped in. It was almost like muscle memory, and I remember being like, wow, I'm so glad I like took school seriously and paid attention, because they told me there'd be situations like this, and there were. um but what I hope you're hearing, Amy, is like a lot of us do go to the IOCDF. There's a lot of really good trainings outside the IOCDF. I'm just biased being on their board, but I've taken the pediatric BTTI, the adult BTTI. The conferences are incredible. Different, being part of different consult groups. I would say if there's, one thing that we've talked about at the IOCDF is how do we get, OCD more prominent into graduate programs. The hard thing, like was said from the panel, is some grad programs. I know, like one of the I was one of those weird people that applied to 12 schools. Please don't ever do that. It was way too expensive, and then I had way too much stress hearing back. But like for instance, one of the schools I got to in LA, they predominantly focused on working with just children, and I wanted to expand just beyond that. But I would say crisis and trauma gets focused on most in programs, and then it's really kind of expanding and being expertly trained once you leave. So how about for finding a mentor? What was when you talk about mentors and stuff? I know some programs have mentors. I know Brianna said that you, Alnardo, kind of directed her in the OCD space and things. What does it look like to like find a mentor, and what are something you're trying to seek from them? Like what's helpful from finding someone that can help mentor you? And did your grad program have a mentor? Did you have to find one? Or what do you recommend for those watching?
I just want to speak really quickly as a like first generation college student. I feel like so many of the sort of soft skills of like how to speak to professors and what do you talk to them about and how do you seek out mentorship just is not super common knowledge. And so one of the things that I tried to force myself to do, whether it was in undergrad or in graduate school, was just have more conversations and really utilize my university's resources. There are so many people who are looking to mentor, to support, to give direction to students. And sometimes when I didn't really know where to turn, I was like, let me just see what NYU has for us, this week or this month. And you find so many helpful connections just through having conversations. So I just encourage people to put themselves out there, even if it feels scary or overwhelming, or you don't know the right quote unquote things to say or ask.
No, that was one of the best advice. I happen to have someone in my life who was a professor, and he's like, go to office hours. He's like, we don't want to just be sitting there not doing anything. And I went to office hours and always kind of got a good understanding towards the beginning of the semester what they were looking for and what we were trying to achieve. And I never felt kind of going in blind throughout the semester. So I would definitely say that. I know like my grad school had a mentor program. And then what we ended up doing is like creating Facebook groups too. And so it was kind of nice because a lot of times we'd be in the Facebook group. And I had a close enough relationship, I'd text my mentor, but you could kind of put questions in that, and people from, the graduating cohort was like, oh, do this, or, oh, that. But also finding people, I know for me, like when it was time to like turn in my paperwork to get licensed, it was nice to still be able to reach out to those mentors that are like, don't forget to get this signed and you got to go do this. So I think just looking at someone that's been through it, but I think the school provides it if you can't find somebody in general. How did you find the program that sort of fit for you? I know we had talked about kind of when we first met about in person or virtual. Is it part-time? Is it full-time? Um, you know, like looking at the length of the program, the cost, what is, how does somebody kind of navigate those factors? Because I think there's a lot to go into it. It might be what's local. Do you want to go out of town? I know a big choice for me, some of the schools that I got into were really nice and really expensive. And I just was like, I can't have crippling debt. I will cry every day. So what are some of the factors that you took into personally? And what are some of the things if somebody was to come up to you right now and say, hey, I'm looking at different programs beyond just what we had already kind of discussed, what are some other just like maybe logistical factors or things people should take into account?
I know for me, I couldn't leave New York just because of like family reasons. So that was one piece. Like geographically, I knew I needed to stay like in New York, like New Jersey area, and then thinking about what schools are in line with like a theoretical orientation that I was interested in, and that was more evidence based. So like a cognitive behavioral therapy program. So those were some major factors in like initially picking those schools, and then seeing what kinds of labs were there, what kind of work they were doing, populations they were working with, the types of treatment that they were really passionate about. So that those were kind of like the major factors for me at the beginning, but the geographical piece was a primary one.
Which is okay. That was mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leonardo.
I think personally, so for me, as I mentioned before, I was working full time. So finding a program that met in the evenings, so where I could work and then go to classes afterwards. But I think another factor was looking at the accreditation piece of the schools and how much they prepare you for licensure, to making sure they meet the criteria, but also looking for a program that had a pretty rigorous program. Because while I went to school in Florida, I then ended up moving to New York. And so making sure that my schooling would transfer and making sure I could actually get licensed in different states was an important area for me to look into as well.
Yeah. The accreditation is important. I know for me, I wanted a program where I could get my LMFT, but also my LPCC. LPCCs are more recognized. And if I ever decided to move, having that. So that was a big part of it for me as well. Anything for you, Amanda or Brianna, that you kind of like, those were some of the factors, or when people have asked you, you know, how do you pick a school? Like, what about like the virtual? I know my program was all in person and I just need that to like focus and study and pay attention. But for you all, you know, was that a factor? Did you look at online schools? Was that something you took into consideration? Cost? What were some other things that you looked into?
I think the two biggest things for me were, one, I wanted to go somewhere where I knew that the mentor that I was going to work with was going to be doing work in OCD and related disorders. So that was a huge priority of mine. And then the second highest priority was definitely, I was engaged when I was applying, and my husband's career, he kind of needed to be in a major metropolitan area. And so that kind of limited where I was able to look geographically. We were open to moving out of the state, but we kind of needed to be in these metro areas. So those were kind of the two biggest things that I considered. Um, and none of the options that I looked at had a virtual option, but I also know for me, I'm the same way, Chris. Like, I need to be in person, or I'm like, ooh, let me do this other thing on the computer while I'm in class, or those kinds of things. I'm prone to distraction, so I really only had the option of in person, and I think that that was something that would be a better choice for me over virtual as well.
Yeah. Were there any factors that we kind of didn't include, Brianna, that you're like, oh, this was something, or?
I mean, I think it would be hard not to mention finances, because I know that's a big barrier for people. I thought about finances a lot as I was applying to graduate programs. I mean, I did end up going to an expensive university, and I think it was well worth it. But I know that that is a big thing for folks. I would just be thinking about, like, what is your like long-term career goals? Like, how is the program that you're going into going to kind of set you up for success and being able to reach those goals? Is the financial sort of investment that you're making worth it for you? Are there other ways you can sort of reach the goal without having to invest so much financially? It's tough, though. It's a tough decision.
Yeah. Well, that was a big decision for me. I went to California State University, Fullerton, but going through a state school, there's a lot more financial support options. So I think it just comes down to factor. I was looking at Chapman and met with them and got in, and I was like, oh, those are a lot of digits. Okay, never mind. I'll drive by and wave, but so real quick, and then I want to jump to another point that we're kind of talking about. But Matthew Bannister, a good friend of the program, says at 12:30, would it ever be possible for the IOCF to have its own graduate program in person or online to become a licensed therapist or peer support? I don't think so, because I think we would literally have to create a school out here. I know you're in the UK. It's probably way easier to do anything fun out there. But I would say that one thing that we're, not necessarily creating a program, but I think that's what really the anxiety and I was gonna say anxiety in athletes, anxiety in the classroom is really working on, is to help schools, all different age schools, really understand anxiety, OCD, and related disorders and how it impacts students, and what kind of services there are. And then really, like I said, getting into graduate programs and seeing if we can incorporate OCD. I know for me, like one thing that all of us can always do is reach back out to our programs and say, can I do a presentation on it? So I had a friend of mine who went to in my grad program. I ended up going back and teaching at the university, and he wanted me to do two different talks, one on a talk on how to work with people and what maybe unique challenges for the LGBTQ community, but then also wanted me to come back and talk about OCD and body dysmorphic disorder and kind of inform his classes on those two subjects. So that's one of the ways too. A lot of classes want people to come in and speak. I know I had people from NAMI come into my program. So I think that's the best we could do for right now. But that makes me think of something. One thing that we talked about is a lot of people with experience of OCD and related disorders, hoarding, et cetera, go on to then become therapists. What are some factors that people and it could be any recovery. I mean, there might be people in substance use recovery. I remember in my first class, our professor asked us, like, raise your hand if you're here because you've gone through something yourself and saw a therapist for it. And it was like 95% of the classroom. So whether it's OCD and a related disorder or something beyond that, what are some things that people should take into factor if they're kind of in a recovery journey? And then what are some of the services that can provide some support if needed at the beginning? Whoever wants to jump at it first.
I think it could be helpful to think about like other people in your life that can help support you along the way, or to be there when, like, graduate school is a stressful and challenging time. So who could be there to be part of that support system, whether it's family, friends, individuals in your cohort, counseling services at graduate school. So where can you find that support if and when things do get challenging in grad school? It might be something to think about and consider.
Yeah. Well, for the rest of you, like, what are some advice? Like, I know that there are people in my program that were, in recovery from opioid addiction, substance use. There was people that had, trauma and PTSD. There was people like me with OCD, and I think I was the only one. But some other stuff. Like, I think a lot of times people think that in order to go into this field, they have to be perfect and never have gone through anything. And in fact, I find it kind of the opposite. Most of the time, people going on to pursue therapy is because they have had their own experience and therapy was powerful. So for Alnardo or Brianna or Amanda, like, what are some of the, either the services, or what would you speak to if somebody was like worried that they have to have never had anything to be a therapist? Or is there anything to take into account if you are in recovery and going into a grad program?
I think the thing that comes to mind for me is really making sure that you and your wellness and your health is really at the top of your priority list. I know grad school and life is really stressful, and especially when you're in grad school, if you're also working and you have a family and you're all these different things at once, it's a lot. And we can have a tendency to think about how this urgency of this deadline and all of these things that I need to do, and you're not going to be in your tip-top shape and producing your best work and being the best therapist that you can be if you aren't also pouring into yourself first and, like, really taking care of yourself. And I think we can feel guilty as people in helping professions, like guilty taking that time, and just recognizing that we all need it, and especially when we are somebody that struggles with some kind of mental health condition or we're in recovery, and just really, like, leaning into taking that time for yourself, even when it feels like it shouldn't be the top priority. It really is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we talk a lot as clinicians about like dismantling shame for the clients that we work with, but that really does start from us. So I think as much as you can practice that, that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah. And then I'd add like making sure you have someone who is checking in on you. So letting them know ahead of time, like, I'm going into this program. There can be really stressful times. Let's check in once a week or once a month and see how things are going and ask me. And someone that you can be honest and open with, so that if you are struggling or something's going on, then there's someone kind of there that you can talk through and work through with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. I think, as somebody with OCD who went on to become a therapist, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is I just wanted to make sure I was in a spot of recovery that I could start to like learn and focus and help people. But I think I learned real quickly in that first day when everybody raised their hand that everybody was going through something. And so you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be in full recovery. I think you just have to be at a place enough. But always remember, before you're going to start seeing people with OCD, you're going to have a couple of years of education and training and practice. And so, I have a client right now who's a little worried because she's in a grad program. She just started, but she's still seeing me for OCD. And I'm like, I would tell you if I thought it was too severe right now, but you're in a great place. And by the time you see clients, you'll be able to, to be there. The last thing I want to ask, because I know we talked about it and it's such an important kind of topic for this, is self-care. You've gotten in, you've gotten accepted. Now you have to practice. They always talk about self-care. What were some of the things that you did or are currently doing, Amanda, in grad school that was like the self-care? Because I think they talk about it, but we don't take it seriously until you have to take it seriously. So what were some of the things that you would advise people to do or you did for general self-care throughout, the grad school process for people, or just licensed, like all the people in early career development?
I think as a self-professed over-controlled person and likely lean towards perfectionistic, is reminding myself similar thing I tell clients these days, where it's like good enough is good enough. And continuing to try to achieve perfection or make it perfect is going to burn you out really quick. And I found that pretty early on. And so I think that was like a reminder throughout my program pretty frequently that like, okay, doing your best is good enough. And that's what's important rather than having to achieve this, unrealistic standard.
Yeah, really, really good reminder. How, for the rest of you, what were some things that you're like, hey, please, please, please do this?
I know for me, it was kind of keeping up with the movement in any way. So whether that's continuing like a gym routine or going for a walk or incorporating yoga or things like that, there was kind of a non-negotiable of having time to engage in some kind of movement. And also, I think another piece is like socializing with others too is like a form of self-care, not only like when you first get in, but then also like once you're actually in the program and taking classes and stuff. Like sometimes it felt this urgency to be like, okay, I need to go and I need to study and I need to do work, but there's another 10 of us that are going to be together for the next 5 years. We could go to lunch together and the work could get done later and it will be good enough, and that's it. So like prioritizing that social connection as well.
Yeah.
I think piggybacking off of that, one piece of advice I'd give myself if I was looking back is being more present. I think I was so future focused on what my career was going to look like long term that I didn't savor the moment. So savor the moment for all of you that are in it.
Really, really good advice. I know. I wish I could slow down and have enjoyed it more. And then Amanda, final piece of advice for people that are any stage in the early career development as somebody who's a current grad school student. What could you take everybody out with? If you're on the fence about applying or might want to go in the psychology field and treat OCD, or are in grad school and trying to hold it together or just started, what are some final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely have moments in my program where I've been like, how am I holding this together? It feels like things are just right on the edge of like just a meltdown. And I think like recognizing that those times are normal. If you're feeling on the fence about applying, if you're in and you're struggling,
just reminding yourself why you're doing this. Like, what is it that is driving you to want to pursue this, and keeping that at the top of mind, like really connecting with that purpose. And I find that for me, that was the thing that encouraged me to take that leap and go to apply. And it's the thing that has kept me going when things have gotten really hard. Um, just keeping that purpose and those values that are really important to you, and really connecting with those.
Well said. Well, thank you so much to our esteemed guests. So this is going to live on both our Facebook and our YouTube. So if you are watching this and there is somebody in your life that is either contemplating, like we had somebody in high school, a senior, if you're an undergrad, if you're in grad school, if you've just graduated, if you're getting your license, if you're associate, there was so much good advice from my 4 panelists. Please, please, please share this with them. So you could go to youtube.com, obviously, /IOCDF, or the same facebook.com/IOCDF. I think both of them live under videos or live, so definitely check this out. I think it'll be a great resource for years to come for students in that field. I wish I would have had something like this. So when Liz Lindley was setting this up, I was like, oh, I wish I would have had a live stream like this instead of having to harass the poor girl at my aunt's retirement party, who probably still to this day is like, he was crazy, but it was really helpful. So I hope this was helpful to that. But to my guests, Leonardo and Brianna and Amanda and Stephanie, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules to come on the live stream. We'd love to have you back. Thank you. For everybody watching, don't forget, we have a lot of upcoming events. If you are a Spanish speaker or feel that anybody would get some help from a Spanish-speaking only conference, we have our OCD conference in Spanish. It's going to be both virtual and in Chile. I wish the IOCF would send me, and I speak some Spanish, so I will take that personally. But if you're in Chile, or if you're virtual and want to watch it, it's September 25th through the 26th. Also in November, we have the Faith and OCD conference on Wednesday, November 19th, which is virtual. And then if you're a clinician and want to get further trained, we talked today about getting more trainings through the IOCDF. There's the advanced forum on pediatric OCD at the Westin Long Beach in California, October 23rd and 25th. That's where I went to after my prom. So shout out to the Westin. But anyways, thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. Make sure you go to iocdf.org for all of your OCD needed material. And thank you once again to my panel that truly made this a enriched discussion. Thank you, everyone. Take care. And we appreciate you. Come back next Wednesday, 12 Eastern. Take care.